Welcome to Conversations and Coffee, where we have conversations that are authentic, lighthearted, and purposeful. Our conversations will be engaging. You will hear from industry experts that will have you saying, "Whoa, wow, I didn't know that." Join us, because it's all about you, your loved ones, and anyone who want to stay informed and, of course, living your best life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations and Coffee. I'm Dr. Joy, the host of this show. I'm glad you are here eavesdropping on the conversation. Today, we have with us Miss Kimberly Best. She is the owner of Best Conflict Solutions, which is a business that focuses on several types of mediation to help support families, seniors, and groups of people who may have conflict with one another. Miss Best is passionate about helping others resolve conflicts in a productive, non-confrontational way, using mediation and collaborative problem solving. Not only does she help with conflict resolutions through her business, but she is also a volunteer mediator, a practicing facilitator, and a working member of the Association of Conflict Resolution Elder Mediation Professional Development Group. Wow, Kimberly, you have a very diverse background and a sincere love for what you do. With that being said, eavesdropper Ms. Best is also the author of her book, How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. I believe that we all need this type of guide to prevent conflict and find solutions with making life decisions. She is also the proud mother of 5 grown children, and as she says, the grandmother of 4 lively little ones. I want to give Ms. Best an opportunity to expand on who she is, what she does, and why her job is important to you, our eavesdroppers, and also to your family or anyone that need help with conflict resolution. So, wherever you are tuning in today, get your coffee. Kim, do you have yours?
I definitely have mine.
All right. Let's start this conversation. So, Kim, I've told our eavesdroppers just a snippet of information about who you are. Now, let's hear from you as you tell us more about the job that you do in your community as a mediator.
So are you asking me, Joy, about community mediation or particularly my job in elder mediation?
Both, because listeners that are our age, and we have listeners that are trying to help their parents or grandparents go into their golden years.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start off by describing mediation a little bit, because it is a powerful tool that is an alternative to litigation, for one. I mean, it's for problem solving, whether there's 2 people or, 1,000 people, though they would be broken down into smaller groups. And I want to say, starting off, that it's about conflict. Conflict and mediation are both words that when I say I'm a mediator, people kind of back up 2 steps. Same with conflict. When I say I teach and train on conflict, they're like, when I ask people if they have conflict, often they'll say no. But the truth is, conflict isn't bad. It's a sign that there's a problem to solve. And for a lot of your people that are working with their families and, making caregiving decisions, these conflicts are just not avoidable. And in life, conflicts are not avoidable. The problem is very few of us have learned productive ways for dealing with conflict. So we use the tools we have. And a lot of time those tools come from, I often ask people, what happened in your family when you were little and you were the source of conflict. You know, we take those things that we learned, how to avoid it, how to maybe be the bully over it, the loudest voice, disappear. And those are because that's all we learned, usually to protect our own lives, you know, to some extent. It even feels like that. So but we're also dealing with conflict every day in productive ways because we're always making decisions. So the emotionally charged ones are clearly the harder ones to do.
Yes. And what you're saying is so true, because as we were doing our research and trying to find an appropriate person to come on the podcast and talk about our elders, our seniors living their best lives, my assistant, she says to me, you will have a guest that will be a mediator. And I was like, okay, let me do some research. I have no idea why are we doing this?
Right.
And when we continued the conversation and I did my research, I now understand the purpose of a mediator as we continue to get older. And I understand your job as being a mediator or a facilitator or a person who's able to help families, you know, with mediation. And just as you said, that word mediation, it's like, oh, no. So, saying, I think you called it.
I changed it to collaborative problem solving. Collaborative problem solving, because at the root of it, you asked about community mediation. We have so many fractures right now, and a lot of times they're in our own families. And they go the spectrum of worldwide fractures, right? So wherever we can't come together, getting someone to help us work together to get to the place that we want to be.
Yes.
You know, that's the goal of mediation. And we use facilitation and negotiation in it. I mean, we're facilitating dialogue between the people or parties. To negotiate an outcome that works for both of them. Yes,
definitely. And I think, you know, the word that you use is a softer word that will make people say, okay, I can do that. But when you say mediation, that's such a hard word, something that we've heard in a court of law. You know, we're going to get a mediator, or in divorce court, or something like that. You know, and you always think negative, but the way you soften that up, I love, because then it makes our eavesdroppers and myself feel like, oh, I think that's something, you know, that we can use as individuals or as families to help our families continue.
I want to clarify something in that, because mediation is an alternative to litigation. Right. And the reason it first came around for a lot of people was that litigation is a very acrimonious, you know, you're enemies with somebody fighting for you, and somebody wins and somebody loses. So some smart person came up and said, well, why don't we try to solve the problems before they get to that? So that was the founding of mediation. But today it is a lot around court mandated mediation and divorce mediation. And those are most often attorney driven. So there's two types of mediators. There's attorney mediators and non-attorney mediators. Okay. Any mediator acting as a mediator, whether attorney or not, cannot give legal advice. So we're removed from the legal system. But oftentimes, an attorney mediator has an entirely different way of doing mediation. It's related to the law. You know, it's more, I hate to say aggressive, so because there may be attorneys on here, but most of them agree. I mean, I've done attorney talks as well. They're really not trained in holding the emotion or facilitating conversations. They're trained in getting to some type of agreement. Yes. And non-attorney mediators, like myself, who are trained in conflict and psychology and people understand that in order to get to your best agreement, you have to deal with those issues and feelings and hurts, so that you can make your best decisions with a clearer mind. Yeah. And so we can hold space for that. I like to say we make it safe, right? To have those conversations that maybe your family hasn't been able to have it its entire life. So why could you do it now when things are really hard? You have a dying relative or something. So you can go to an attorney mediator, and I'm not saying that some of them aren't doing mediation the same type of way that a lot of elder mediators are who are not attorneys, because in the ACR, the American Conflict Resolution, Association of Conflict Resolution, the elder division, some of those attorneys have trained me because they're so good at that. They're specific to elder attorneys. So know your mediator, because there is the ones that represent exactly what you have described. Yes. And there is a whole nother kind. So interview them if you're considering it, see what you get, and make a decision based on your comfort and your trust level, and the fact that at the end of mediation, you get to make the decisions. If that mediator is trying to make them for you,
yes,
run.
Okay, that's good. Good advice. Good advice. Because that's what our eavesdroppers really, really need to hear. I do want to ask you, as I was doing my research and getting ready for this interview, this question just popped up in my mind just a few moments ago. But it is, when you are looking for a mediator or a facilitator, how would a person go about doing that if they don't see a business that's called Best Conflict Solutions? Yeah. So how would they go about doing that?
There is a website that's probably the most known about mediation. It offers a lot of articles too. It's for mediators, but also for the public, and it's called mediate.com. And it does break down mediation into different types. So there is an elder mediation you can specify. Some of those mediators are my colleagues around the country who have helped me be a better mediator, who are part of the ACR elder division and working group that we have. So I think we're trying to start a website where it's easy. But it's taking us longer than we wanted to, just around elder mediation. But going to mediate.com is a good way. Google it, and also kind of Google if you have an attorney mediator. How trained are they in this? My website says, kind of my background on that. And having a medical background helps a lot. Yeah. But, do you do traffic court and elder mediation? I also think the elder mediation part from an attorney is going to be more around the legal issues. Mm-hmm. So, power of attorney and conservatorship and those kind of things. People like me we can't get together to make a decision, or we have a family member who's out of the picture who may want to be coming into it, or how do we get along better? Yeah. How do we make better decisions? So it's kind of like dependent on your need.
Okay. And I think what you just said, most people need a mediator like you, because most times when you're dealing with grown adult, when you're dealing with grown children, so many of them have their different things that they are doing and how they want to handle mom or dad. And then if it is a lot of them, then you really, really have to make sure everything is going really smooth in order for everybody point to be taken, or and to make a decision that is best for their parents without putting their own, feelings into that.
Yeah, I would say putting their own feelings in it, but in a productive way. Because another difference between us and attorneys is, and when you look for a mediator, if they're trying to control for your feelings, again, run, because our feelings are important. Not that they're everything, but they're important. And we know we can't actually make decisions without including our feelings in it. So it makes space for that. It makes space for acknowledging your feelings, no matter what they are. There's not a right and wrong. One of my favorite parts about mediation is that it's not about blame. You know, we're not looking for whose fault it is. We're looking for a better way forward. And like you described families, look, we all have family histories. Like, it's just part of being human. And if you look at your family and say, mine's a hot mess, so are all of them. I mean, even sometimes my family is a hot mess. Yeah, we just don't talk about it, y'all. Like, this is hard stuff, and being human is hard stuff. And I think we just all need help sometimes. We need to see something we can't see. And sometimes that's a way out.
Yes.
You know, with families, we get stuck in our stories and we guess what the other person, how many times you say, I know what she's going to say, or I know what he's going to say. Well, this mediator is going to say, when you're doing that, you're stuck in the past. You're seeing them in the past and you're not seeing them now. So what if we gave them an opportunity to give a different answer than what you've already decided? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's good.
You might be right. You might be right, but you're robbing them of an opportunity to be a different person. And we all change and grow. The thing about what we said a year ago, for most of us, it's not that today. We've learned new things. We've changed our mind. And people want to say, well, in 1972, you told me. And that was true in 1972, but it's not true now.
It's not.
So I like to say, yeah, whatever we decide, even in an agreement in mediation, it's for now. Because circumstances change, we change, our truth changes, because our experience changes. And so it's for now. It's not what you said is etched in stone. And I learned that the hard way. I used to etch everything in stone that somebody said. And then I realized that comes from a place of fear. Not a place of growth.
Same thing. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Just things that you're saying just makes me think about my own family and how I deal with my own siblings, because I am the oldest, and you know how the oldest is. Everything is my way. And then you just have to really, really look at the whole picture and not take somebody where they were when they were maybe in college or in their early 20s, when now they're in their 40s and 50s, and they've changed. So yes, that is good conversation.
I want to say to that real quick, Joy, you just described it so well, that we very often, and your listeners are going to relate to this, we see the person as the problem. You know, Joy is the problem. The person is not the problem. The problem is the problem, that we can't make a decision about this or that we can't communicate well. So one thing mediation does is separate the problems out so we can address the problems. We can address problems. We can't change Joy. Joy will change when she's ready to change, if she feels she needs to change. But you're not the problem. And for those who are labeled problems or labeled others, a big sigh of relief. You are not the problem. Maybe how you communicate is a problem. Maybe how you communicate with a particular person. Maybe your, decision-making skills aren't your strength. There are problems there, but you as a human being are not the problem.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. As we move on through our conversation today, do a lot of people know about mediators and do a lot of people know about mediators being used as what we've talked about so far? Or is this something that the way we're getting it out now through this podcast and through, Google, can you kind of expand on that a little bit as far as how they can know, or is it something that I need to do as a person who works with families on a regular basis? Do I need to just kind of tell them about these things when I hear these conversations, or how do we make it more popular? I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
No, well, thank you for having this conversation, because you're certainly one way to do that. You're right. Like, your reaction to, well, mediation, that's just where it is now. And I think we're trying to, people like me, a lot of my colleagues are trying to give it as an alternative. And people are used to the legal system. Sometimes they're used to the conflict in their families. So it's so new. It works. I mean, it just works. And it's also so unknown. It's been around a while, but not in the different aspects that it is. We started the conversation with besides elder. I mean, we do community work. I'm also a facilitator in police community conversations for the Los Angeles City District Attorney's Office. It's used for just any time we need to build a bridge, right? Like, and it's better for us socially, family-wise, if we can find what we have in common and connect. If we can see what we want our futures to look like and find a path for it, instead of focusing on our differences. And the irony is, Joy, that what we do in families, it's the same thing we do in the bigger issues. It's just magnetized by, not magnetized. It's not a magnet. It's just proportionately so much bigger to a bigger social.
Definitely.
So and it really comes down to hearing other people, to listening, to understanding what they're really saying, what the needs are underneath that, and that's what mediation does. So our goal is to provide a safe place where respect is risen, acrimony is down, helping people to listen well, to understand what the other person's saying. And when we do that, when we hold a safe place, when we are honest, when we're speaking to not hurt, and when we do speak to hurt, understanding where that's coming from and having an opportunity to redo it, I always say miracles happen, because they do. There's a grace that comes in and just points to another path. And it's not me telling people what they should do. This is inside every one of you. You know, my job is to hold that space for you, and help you decide what you want the rest of your life to look like. Yes,
definitely. So what is the cost? That would probably be the next question. What would be a cost for a mediator?
Big range. So that's a great question. So there are community mediation centers.
Okay.
And I don't know how many of them do elder care, but I got to do a shout out, because we have some in Tennessee here, run by close colleagues of mine. And community mediation centers sometimes do free or prorated mediations. Usually more around court-centered things. So it just depends on the area, wherever your people are. Different regions of the country, different states do that differently. Then you have the attorney mediators, and I don't know about in the elder division, but historically attorney mediators can run as high as $800 an hour. And I understand a lot of people require a retainer in mediation also. Okay. So, and then there's, some mediators are far less, in the, maybe $50 an hour. Personally, I charge $200 an hour, and the fee is normally split between all the members. Yes. I will work with people if they can't do that, because I want this to be an opportunity for everyone, and, not just the people who can afford services that we all need. And that's part of why the Community Mediation Center. I just want to say, in addition to that, I don't know any mediators who don't spend a big chunk of their life giving back. It's just in our blood, right? So it's a calling to help create peace, or an option to peace, a road to peace. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. So eavesdroppers, you hear Kimberly, she's just told us what those prices look like. and also told us that there are community mediation. Is it community mediation center?
Community mediation centers, that's correct.
Okay, so look in your area, see if you can find a community mediation center in your area. If not, then look up mediators. And we've also talked about going to mediate.com, which is another way to get a mediator to help you and your family. So now, Kimberly, let's jump into elder care mediation, because that is what our audience is really all about, is seniors and them living their best lives. And so again, we might have touched on it, but can you now specifically tell us what is elder mediation?
Yeah, so the mediation itself, is trained conflict management, bringing people together. We're a neutral for all sides, right? We're not to pick sides. I like to say, instead of a neutral, because we all have feelings around stuff, that I'm omnipartial, that I am for everyone in the room. Because always, believe it or not, when you put yourself in the shoes of the other person, the person telling their story, you can see exactly how that makes sense. So that it's confidential. Everything that stays in the room, is said in the room, stays in the room, and we sign a legally binding note to the confidentiality. And part of that is to make it safe so that later something said in here doesn't get taken to court. That just is not going to happen. So it's a safe place to speak your truth. Okay. And that's the only way to get honest decisions. Not about blame. Everyone has a voice. We're leveling the playing field so that there's equal power, because we know sometimes, like, the oldest person in the family, and then I call it a systems design approach to moving forward. What do we want the next thing to look like? It's an alternative to litigation. It's empowering for individuals and groups, and it's educational, because we learn a lot about how to do this moving forward. We learn about ourselves. We learn about the people we're in conflict for. So if you're asking, go ahead. When
is elder mediation appropriate? Because would everyone consider this as they are helping their parents live their best life and make kind of some decisions? Or is this when everybody is like, I'm ready to scream and go out,
Well, Joy, unfortunately, people come to me at that point. and it's, the work is so much harder. It's like court-appointed mediations. Like, they wait until, it's gone through the whole legal system. Nobody likes each other at all. And they're like, okay, work it out. The sooner we can do that, the easier it is. So front loading that, hey, we're going to have a hard conversation. Let's bring somebody into this. We have some decisions to make. That makes my job a whole lot easier, and your experience better as well. But honestly, for the most part, we'll try it. And then when it's broken, we'll think about fixing it. Then when it's really broken, it takes courage to do this. It takes courage to show up to somebody that you don't know and say, here's my brokenness. Can you help me fix it? Yeah. We'll keep you safe in that, because we're all in those spaces sometimes. So, I hope I answered your question.
Yes,
I got lost on a tangent.
That's okay. So, eavesdroppers, I just want to say what Kimberly is basically saying is that before you get to that, I want to, fight it out. Get to the point where if you know that you and your siblings or you and your family are on different paths of how mom and dad will live the rest of their days, then you bring in a mediator as like Kimberly to help you to solve those problems before you get to that fighting mode. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. At any point in that journey, when you feel you're stuck or want to find a better way, call a mediator. And Joy, not to shout out to my book, but this is what my book is about, planning this ahead of time. And I give stories of, in my career as a nurse, that people who haven't, like almost all of us know or know of someone or have been in the place where we're faced with something, a moment that has to be, a decision that has to be made in a moment, a crisis decision, a life and death decision, and we don't know what that person wants. And my book is about having these discussions ahead of time. What happens when that happens, when we have these discussions early, when we walk through these challenging stages, we have a roadmap.
Yeah.
And this matters. It's a legacy thing, right? Like it's a matter of looking back. I walked my dad and my mom, but my dad lived with me for 10 years. And even as a nurse, I look at things and I'm like, oh, could I have done this different? You know, it's hard. Like it's just a hard place to be. So at any point in time, it's harder now too, because you know, we're all biologically wired to handle conflict differently.
Yes.
We often have trust issues with the other person. You know, we're not sure we can trust their decisions or them. Old family dynamics get in the way, those patterns that have been there forever. And now when we can barely make it when things are good, we have the hardest decisions we'll ever make.
Yes.
I had a client tell me that making these decisions are literally the decisions between life and death.
Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility. Yeah.
That was part 1. We cannot wait until next week, where we will still talk to Miss Kimberly Best about mediation and conflict problem solving. See you next week for part 2.